Hello, dear friends. Here we are, The Medium's Harvest by Emmanuel through the medium Xavier, published in 1961 through the Brazilian Spiritist Federation. That book, as you may know, is a tribute to the Medium's book. The Medium's book is considered the manual for mediums and evokers, for whomever wants to know more about mediumship, mediums, whether ourselves or others. That's the book. And Emmanuel quite uniquely teaches us how to feel those passages, because in Spiritism we don't simply got this information, as Kardec said, to know of it, but to transform ourselves. Inner transformation is our goal. Whatever we're studying on Spiritism, we cannot lose sight of the needed tweaking of the soul, right? We encounter many people nowadays who spend time studying, and with groups, studying, but we forget the main goal is not only knowledge for knowledge, which is noble, but the sublime goal of true transformation, changes, the inner changes and the changes in our society. As Allan Kardec said, the inevitable consequences of the implementation of Spiritism in our lives will be the transformation of our society. Organizations, institutions are going to be changed inevitably. The Spiritist principles are universal. They don't depend on the name, the label Spiritism, because these ideas are universal and immortal. But those are going to change life on the earth and in the universe as we speak. So, for us today, we're studying chapter 30. Chapter 30 is so unique because as we're studying mediumship, Allan Kardec, in the Medium's book, talks about a special type of mediumship. It's quite interesting. It's item 185. And Emmanuel, through Xavier, writes chapter 30, The Medium's Harvest, inspired by this item 185, which is the first item of chapter 16 of the Medium's book, titled Special Mediums. Really? We thought all mediums are special, right? A mediumship is an organic faculty. It's not a big deal. The big deal is to educate mediumship. It's like intelligence. Oh, that person is intelligent. Big deal if the person does not use that intelligence to bring forth the good for everybody. What's the point? Right? There are many parents who are me like, my child is so smart. What did he do? Nothing, because they're so smart. No educational system fits for them. And they stay home doing nothing. That's very smart. I don't think it's smart. It's another word. Because when we're really, really intelligent, we may not conform with this educational system that I agree is failing us, but there are other pathways. Be creative. So we tell our children, okay, if that's not good for you, what shall we do? But do nothing is a no deal, right? So, well, let's see what Kardec says here, so we can understand more deeply what Emmanuel is going to bring to us. Okay? Be ready, because we'll feel how Emmanuel is teaching us to study the Medium's book and bring it personal to us. You ready? Set and go. Special aptitudes of mediums. Besides the mediumistic categories already enumerated, mediumship offers infinite varieties that include what we may be called special mediums. Those gifted with still undefined particular aptitudes, apart from the qualities and knowledge of the manifesting spirit. The nature of the resulting communication is always related to the nature of the spirit and bears the stamp of its degree of evolution, its wisdom, or its ignorance. But in spite of similarities among spirits of the same degree on the hierarchical scale, there is undeniably a tendency for each spirit to occupy itself with a particular specialty. Spirits who produce raps, for example, rarely depart from physical manifestations, while among those who provide intelligence manifestations, there are spirits who are poets, musicians, painters, scholars, moralists, physicians, etc. We are referring to spirits of an average order because in a more elevated degree of the hierarchy of the aptitudes blend in the unique of perfection. However, says Kardec, alongside the aptitude of the spirit itself is the aptitude of the medium, the instrument that may be either more appropriate and flexible or less so, in which the spirit discovers individual qualities that we cannot always appraise. Now Kardec is going to make a comparison to wrap up this item. Let us make a comparison. A very skillful musician has several violins at his disposal, which to the ordinary person all appear to be good instruments, but among which the consummate artist can tell a big difference, perceiving extremely delicate nuances that will enable him to choose some and reject others, nuances that he perceives by intuition without being able to define them. The same applies to mediums, despite the equality of their state as to mediumistic potency. A spirit will nevertheless prefer one over another according to the type of communications it wishes to transmit. As a result, we see, for example, mediums under the influence of a spirit who writes admirable poetry, even though they themselves have never been able to make verse in their ordinary state. Others, on the contrary, are normally poets, but as mediums they only write prose in spite of their desire to write poems. The same happens with paintings, music, etc. There are mediums who, without possessing scientific knowledge, are most capable of receiving communications of this nature. Others are more skillful at historical studies. Others more easily serve as interpreters for moralist spirits. In a word, whatever the medium's flexibility may be, the communications he or she receives most generally have a special stamp. Furthermore, there are those who never leave a determined circle of ideas, and when they try to do so, they only receive incomplete, laconic, and often erroneous communications. Besides the issue of aptitudes, spirits also prefer to communicate through this or that medium according to the affinity between them. Thus, in spite of an obvious similarity of conditions, the same spirit will be more explicit through certain mediums solely because they are better suited to it. Breathe in and out, me too. Ooh, wow, wow. See how much we need to learn about mediumship. So rule of thumb, affinity. The spirits don't talk through this medium or that medium because they like the color of their hair or because they like the way they dress. I mean, that could be a possibility, but that's not the case. It depends on affinity. We're talking about what Kardec calls fluidic affinity. Fluidic affinity is something that we'll study sometime later during the medium's harvest. But let's keep it in mind. If you are a scientist and a medium, that doesn't mean that scientist spirits are going to certainly communicate through you. Why? Because not necessarily we have affinity. Maybe that scientist spirit is going to communicate through somebody whom in this life is not a scientist. Why? Because we're talking about the inheritance of all the knowledge that we have from many lives. Look at Chico Xavier. In this life, he barely had the 4th elementary school grade. And he brought books, poetry, novels, books about history, all different types. Spirits of high stature, of different abilities came to write through him and speak through him. But Kardec is talking about mediums of special abilities. How does a medium help us take the most of this part? Shall we see it? So now we're going to read chapter 30th of the Medium's Harvest based on that paragraph. These Other Mediumships. It was a public meeting on April 29th, 1960, inspired on this item 185 of the Medium's book by Kardec. You ready? I'm ready. Let's go. Emmanuel says, in the expansion of the mediumistic resources that enrich your experience under the guidance of the discarnate benefactors, do not neglect the edifying faculties capable of connecting you to the elevation and improvement of the companions on the earth. You pronounce the precious word that the emissaries of culture and intelligence bring through your mouth, impressing attentive listeners. But do not deny the word of tolerance to those who claim indulgence and affection at home. You efficiently counsel the spirits, transgressing the shadows of addiction and crime, conveying advice and warnings from the upper sphere. Do not, however, refuse the loving and patient conversation to the family still confined to ignorance and disturbance. You write the perfect sentence for the understanding of the public under the influence of instructors who live in the higher planes. However, engrave in your own way the sign of a good example, inducing others to make their own existence nobler. You contemplate prodigious visions through clairvoyance, feeling in ecstasy before the sublime joys you observe in advance in the spiritual glory. However, do not forget to look at the wounds of those who suffer extending to them the crumb of your comfort by a message of help. You listen to the moving voices of the great beyond, making surprising narratives for those who admire the incursions in the land of the unusual. Seek, however, to pay attention to the afflictions of the suffering brothers, learning to be useful. You extend your hands in the balsamic spiritual paths in favor of those who seek you, thirsty for relief, but do not avoid the helping hand of work, of spontaneous cooperation to those whom the Lord has entrusted to you in your house. Thus, attend to the multiple faculties by which the goodness of the divine messengers is evidenced, but do not disdain these other mediumships that are largely forgotten: the mediumship of renunciation and patience, the mediumship of humility and service, the mediumship of prudence and loyalty, the mediumship of devotion and correction, in which you can show your services before those who share the struggles, because only then you will be firm support of the light and flame of your own light. It's always surprising to us how Emmanuel breaks it down. Because when I read that item, I don't immediately connect to this level. I still keep thinking at the mechanisms of mediumship, and I focus on the knowledge, the understanding of it. But Emmanuel goes one step further. He says, yes, the spirits will connect through you for different purposes and in different types of mediumship. Great. That's beautiful. So, do not remain yourself there. Walk an extra mile. So here he talks about different types of mediumship. He talks about the mediumship here, speaking mediumship. He talks about the clairvoyance. He talks about mediumship of healing mediumship, writing mediumship. And he's saying, no matter which type, don't forget that you're medium 24/7. And that those that are with you at home, at work, in your neighborhood, anywhere, they also deserve the best of you. Are we attentive to that? So he says, we may be speaking mediums, but do not deny the word of tolerance to those who claim indulgence and affection at home. I know it's hard, because at home we're demanded. Like, you should be more of an understanding. You should, and it's always like this demand, the complaints, the claims. And then there are times we simply say, right? But if I am a medium that brings kindness and culture through the speaking mediumship, why can't I open my heart and say, I know, humanly, it is hard. My ego is bruised. I would love that this or that person would be more understanding to me. But in Christ, it is possible to overcome my limitations and be the medium of tolerance, looking at people who are claiming to be understood, and say, okay, I'm not gonna be sending bad thoughts, bad feelings. On the contrary, I'm gonna keep trusting their divine nature. Jesus, please, through me, bring the tolerance that I still don't have. So that's what Emmanuel is saying. The largely forgotten mediumship of renunciation and patience. Renunciation of the ego. Yeah, because, you know, Christmas is coming up. And if you're listening to this post-Christmas, Christmas should be every day, anyhow. But let's say, Christmas is coming up. And we think about the gifts, which is an exercise. Sometimes people are against gifts. Don't be against gifts. It's not only about consumerism, but it's about thinking of others. Doing this exercise, materially speaking, to think, what would others like to receive? That is an exercise of the soul. So it's valid. Giving gifts become an opportunity for us to get out of our selfishness. What I want, and think about what others would like. And please others, not because they need to be pleased mundanely, but because how can I make somebody happy? Ask. Why don't you ask the people who work in your house? Like, for example, the person who helps the housekeeping. What would your family like? Maybe you can help them bring the gifts to their family. Oh, but they have the money. What if they don't? You can be of help. That's an exercise. It's valid. So one day we can bring gifts of vibration. Right? There will be a day that we're going to bring good vibrations, and that's our gift. Until then, we bring gifts that people actually need. Right? That's an exercise. That's an exercise. But renouncing the ego. Many people in Christmas, like children, my gift, make Santa's list. What I want, what I need, me, mine. So for us adults, we're being called to do this exercise of what do others need. Not necessarily only those in the circle of our affection, but expanding a little more. Like the other day, meeting a man who seemed to be homeless. We were asking, what would you need the most? Because we looked at him, we don't know. If I go there and buy something, he may not need. And he said, I don't need clothes. I've got enough. So what would you need? Food. Oh, okay. Christmas basket. Food. What else do you need? No, food. That's all we need. I have shelter now. I have clothes. But food, I don't. So it's not what I think, it's what they need. The renunciation of my ego. No, but I think he should. No, let's renounce that ego. I don't know. Renouncing. Mediumship of patience, he says. Mediumship of humility and service. I know many people, when you invite them to help others, they always find an excuse not to. Or like, these people don't really need this. Yes, sometimes people apparently don't. But you know, people may look at us and think we don't need the things that we need. And we need. They may look at us like, no, Vanessa doesn't need this. But if they ask me, I would say, no, I do. Really? Really? Yeah, I do. So asking people and being humble enough to serve and not to judge. Because when we judge, we're not being humble. We're thinking we know better. One thing is for an educator to evaluate a student. That's not judgment, it's an evaluation. Judgment is when I label the person and I sentence the person. A judgmental person does not stop at evaluating. The judgmental person sentences the others. Many people don't understand deeply what being judgmental means. To be judgmental, again, is not only to evaluate the circumstance or the person, but to sentence a person, a whole community, or a whole country, a whole culture, based on my evaluation. That is what we mean to be judgmental. To be a medium of humility would be to refrain from being judgmental. Because when I am sentencing others, I'm sitting on the seat of the judge. I think I am above that person, and I am entitled to pointing the finger and sentencing the person. So Emmanuel is saying we need more of that, of humility, service, of prudence. To be prudent, Jesus said that often to us. To be cautious. We're so reactive, right? We were talking about it in the gospel at home tonight as we were reading the passage by Lazar on duty. And he says we need to rescue that, right? We need to rescue this duty before God. And to be prudent would be to consult with God before we do anything. Even before I think, like, I'm going to think about this person. Okay, God. And God certainly is going to say, be careful, because that is my child as well. Oh, really? Yes, remember. They are my child. Yeah, they are children of God. They are children of God. And they reincarnated to learn to do good, right, sunshine. Yeah, the judging, the evaluation that is positive, like to assess a scenario, like Kardec did when we see his studies on the spirits. He's not judging them. He is evaluating, because he's not sentencing any of them. But when I am emotionally labeling people, to discriminate them, to put them down, to undermine them, to put them apart, that's judgment, the negative part of it, right? He says to be loyal, mediumship of loyalty. What is loyalty? Loyalty to God. In the book Good News, Humberto de Campos, through Chico Xavier, writes a chapter about loyalty to God. And he reports passages between Jesus and John. And do you remember when John, with other disciples, slept while Jesus was praying before he was arrested? So John, after Jesus' crucifixion, he was deeply crushed, like, why did I sleep? Why? And later, after Jesus' physical death, Jesus comes back to him and explains, loyalty to God is the key. Many of us don't fulfill our duties, the moral duties that the Spirit Lazar says in the Gospel according to Spiritism, because we are not loyal yet to God. Some people say that when we refer too much to God, we're fanatic. But in Spiritism we call it, we subject ourselves to the Lord of life. Let me consult with God. Should I do this now? Should I feel it? Should I say it? And then, loyal to God, proceed. He says the mediumship of devotion. Some people are like, no, but I've done enough, and people are not grateful. But you're working with God and for God. And they are children of God. You don't need people to be grateful to you. I don't need people to be grateful to me to continue the work. I know, we're used to, yes, for many lives, we're used to that vanity of being praised for what we're doing. But we need to get detached from it and say, God help me detach from that expectation to be recognized, to be acknowledged, to be praised for the works that are simply duties before God. And for parents, a bracket, parenthesis here, for parents. Please read the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 14, item 9. St. Augustine is going to say, amongst other things, the duty, the mission of parents is to connect the soul of their children to God, period. So developing their devotion and loyalty to God is the main parental role. To give us practical tools to understand this, then read, after reading that item, read the book, the first chapters of Paul and Stephen by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. Because there, in between the lines, we're going to see how the mother of Abigail and Jeziel taught them since an early age how to be devoted to God, how to be loyal to God. And then Abigail and Jeziel, later Stephen, became the mediums of the On High, giving help and support to Paul of Tarsus. That is a forgotten mediumship, says Emmanuel. And the mediumship of correction. What does he mean? Of being transforming ourselves. He says, in which, when we practice this type of mediumship, we will show services before those who share the struggles, and then we'll stand firm in our light and the flame of our light. Remember the book by Brother Jacob, Voltei in Portuguese, in English, I Came Back. He talks about the light that he doesn't see in the afterlight. He's like, where's my light? I thought I was so already there. Where's my light? Where's my light? He's trying to find his light. And when we see at the end of the book, it's not a spoiler because we've done this study before, but you can always catch up on the YouTube of Kardec Radio. When it says that when he faced this group of religious spirits, in this case former priests, who were against him when he was incarnated as a spiritist, instead of arguing against them, instead of dwelling with them he felt deep compassion. And as Mentor Joseph was saying this today, when people throw you tomatoes in your performance of life, the tomatoes are not yours. So don't worry. You know why? Because before they saw you, they brought tomatoes they were holding in their hands. So whatever you do, if people are criticizing, throwing tomatoes at you, remember, the tomatoes are not yours. So leave it alone. Think about if somebody dares to hurt, it's because they are hurt. A happy person doesn't throw tomatoes at anyone's performances. And on the contrary, if somebody throws you flowers, those are not ours either. It's theirs. They bought the flowers. They were feeling flowers. They are offering flowers. Thank them, but the flowers is theirs. If we always see from that angle, we're always going to be attentive to not following the traps of vanity, which is a must for mediums. Because people are going to praise or people are going to criticize. Don't stop your march if you're criticized. Because the criticism belongs to the ones who are delivering it. But do not raise yourself above your level, because that's an illusion. If people throw you praises, because the praises belong to them. And thus we're going to be neutral and always adjusting ourselves to the loyalty of God. Right? Right, sunshine. Let's say hello and fixing here our beautiful Kardec radio. For those who are listening to us, we're not gone. We're back. It's just that the microphone disconnected, and probably we're gonna be back. We're hoping. Hold on a second, friends. Not yet. Okay, so let's say hi to those who are here with us, and here and everywhere. Sol Souza, how are you, beautiful sunshine? Talking about sunshine. Hi, sunshine. And Ceissa, how are you, beautiful Ceissa? Teresa Catapano, how are you? Nina Dewey. It's a beautiful classroom. We like to say the names. And of those who are watching on demand, listening to it on demand, big hug to you too. Rosalind Rosa, how are you? Andrea Torres, how are you? Karina Lissi, how are you? Better? Yes, hopefully. Raquel Bakeshi, how are you? Beautiful Lea Severo with us at Kardec Radio, celebrating with you too. Yeah, a third of the book today, thank God. John DeRosa, how are you, my friend? Johnny John, as Virginia said yesterday. Lu Nicoliello, how are you? Yes, what a night. Aidan, how are you? Guilherme Velho, big hug to you. Adilson, Cynthia Peoples, Angelita, Fraternity Without Borders. Right, Angelita? You know, Christmas is coming, right? And that's a way also for us to give gifts to people. Those who are in extreme conditions and they don't have the minimum. Talk to people. You see that even in the richest locations, there are people who don't have the minimum. And imagine in locations like in Africa, in the north or northeast of Brazil, in other countries, the Yemen and others. We know for some of these countries, Madagascar, Mozambique, and parts of Brazil, Fraternity Without Borders is really working day in, day out to reach out to them. you can give a gift of love. Contact Angelita. And if you're going to go straight, go to fraternitywithoutborders.org or fraternidadessemfronteiras.com. Right, Angelita? Maria Silva, how are you? Laura Colli, now in Tennessee, what a joy. Julie, beautiful Australia, sunny Australia, huh? Lisa Teles, Justina, big Christmas hug to you, my friend. Rihanna and Nico, big hug to you too. And Silvio Tero, big hug, Sylvia. Rudy, wonderful to be present tonight. I agree with you. And you know, these other types of mediumship, and Emmanuel is reminding us, do not disdain the other mediumships of renunciation. Let's not forget, when Kardec asked the spirits, what guarantees that we're going to connect with the divine messengers? And they said, the single and only desire to do the good, not for you only, but the general good. If that's what's moving us, woo, we're going to be open gateways of good spirits that are going to use us to reach out to others. Right? Right, Sylvia? What's going to happen tomorrow? Tomorrow, God willing, we will be back. Second third of this book, The Medium's Harvest. Emmanuel is going to talk about something we briefly touched today, but he's going to deepen it. Mediumship and privileges. Whoa, he's relying upon item 306. 306 of the Medium's book talks about, just as a teaser, okay? It's a teaser. So we stay tuned. 306 is about, here, just as a teaser. Kardec is talking about mediums, self-interest. Ooh, spicy. Tomorrow's going to be spicy mediumship study session. Amongst other things, he says, there are no such thing as great mediums or lesser mediums. There are no special class of mediums. You know, people say stronger, better, more powerful. He says, in the message of the gospel, like in the message of Spiritism, what prevails above all is the responsibility before each one of us. Responsibility of feeling and thinking, of speaking and doing. Are you interested? Of course you are. Me too. Let's come back tomorrow and spice it up. Mediumship and privileges. Emmanuel on chapter 31. Next chapter. Okay? For now, eternal gratitude, as Sunshine is saying. We do too. For now, our homework. Let's polish our mediumship of what he says. Let's quote here from Emmanuel. This forgotten mediumship of renunciation, patience, humility, service, prudence, loyalty, devotion, and correction. Shall we, friends? Let's press on and move forward always. Thank you, friends. A beautiful day or night.